Good morning again. I'm Becky from My Jewish Learning. Chag Shavuot Sameach to all of you. As you probably know, we gather 4 times a year to say the Yizkor Memorial Service, and Shavuot is one of those times. So we're really grateful and honored that you chose to spend these minutes with us today. Just a few ground rules so you know what's ahead. We really want to honor everyone that you're remembering today, so please share names in the chat. And finally, everybody will be muted until the final part of the service when we say Kaddish together, and then I will give everybody a chance to unmute so that all of our voices can be heard. And with that, I will turn it over to Rabbi Rachel Druck, who is our leader today. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone, and Chag Sameach. Before we begin, I just want to say that I know that for some of you, your loss may have occurred recently, and this is the first time that you are saying Yizkor, whether in general or on that particular person's behalf. While others here may have been saying Yizkor for years, and I want to acknowledge the different places that people may be in their journeys of mourning and express the hope that everyone, whether your losses are new or longstanding, can find some comfort here. I also want to acknowledge the fact that with the war and with the recent attacks yesterday in Denver and the recent killing of Yaron Lashinsky and Sarah Milgram, it's been a really dark period, and many of us are coming into this Yizkor service with especially difficult feelings. So I hope that this service, whether it's the words that I say, the prayers that we recite, and or the simple fact of gathering and being together and being there for one another, provide some form of comfort and relief, however much is possible. So let's begin with Psalm 23. I'll read it first in Hebrew and then in English. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai ro'i lo echsar, bin'ot esher yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot yina'aleni. Nafshi yishovev yancheni b'ma'agale tzedek למען שמו, גם כי אלך בגיא צלמוות, לא אירא רע, כי אתה עמדי, שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי, דשנת בשמן, sorry, I lost my place. תערוך דשנת בשמן ראשי כוסי רוויה, אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. A Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. God makes me lie down in green pastures. God leads me to water in places of repose. God renews my life. God guides me in right paths as befits God's name. Though I walk through the valley of deepest darkness, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You spread a table for me in full view of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my drink is abundant. Only goodness and steadfast love shall pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for many years. So Shavuot is, among other things, a celebration of the giving of the Torah at Sinai. It's a moment that exists in our national and religious memory outside of the bounds of time, in which all Jews, past, present, and future, whether Jews by birth or those who discovered their Jewish souls later on in life, stood together at Sinai and were part of the revelation. Yehuda Amichai, in his poem The Jews, takes this lack of a timeline and what it means to be standing together outside of space and time, and tries to understand the meaning and the significance of what it means to be part of this process. I'll read a selection from the poem in English translation, but you are invited to look over the poem in its entirety. The Jews are like photos in a display window, all of them together, short and tall, alive and dead, brides and grooms, bar mitzvah boy and babies. Some are restored from old yellowed photographs. Sometimes people come and break the windows and burn the pictures. And then they start photographing and developing all over again and display them again, sad and smiling. A Jewish man remembers the Sukkah in his grandfather's home, and the Sukkah remembers for him the wandering in the desert, that remembers the grace of youth and the tablets of the Ten Commandments, and the gold of the golden calf, and the thirst and the hunger that remember Egypt. The Jews are not a historical people, and not even an archaeological people. The Jews are a geological people with rifts and collapses and strata and fiery lava. Their history must be measured on a different scale. Some time ago, I met a beautiful woman whose grandfather performed my circumcision long before she was born. I told her, "You don't know me, and I don't know you, but we are the Jewish people. Your grandfather and I the circumcised, and you the beautiful granddaughter with golden hair. We are the Jewish people." And what about God? Once we sang, "There is no God like ours." Now we sing, "There is no God of ours." But we sing. We still sing. There's a lot that can be said about this poem and the ways in which we can locate ourselves within a long chain of tradition and our connections to those who have come before us. But I actually want to leave Yehuda Amichai to speak for himself and make sure that we dedicate a moment also to the Book of Ruth, which is read on Shavuot, and to make sure that it doesn't get lost amidst the grandeur of Revelation and Sinai and all of the meaning of that. For those who are unfamiliar, very briefly, or the Book of Ruth is the story of a Moabite woman, so not an Israelite, who chose to follow her Israelite mother-in-law, Naomi, from Moab back to Naomi's homeland after the deaths of their husbands. Ruth eventually marries Boaz, and one of their descendants is King David. And important to note, the Messiah is supposed to be a descendant of King David. So the Book of Ruth is permeated with loss. It starts with a famine and the loss of a home as Naomi and her husband and sons leave for Moab. It continues with the loss of Naomi's husband and sons, Naomi and Ruth's loss of status as penniless widows. There are even midrashim, legends, that state that Boaz himself, who in the text is a prominent landowner who doesn't seem to have too many problems, was himself a widower and who had no less than 60 children, each of whom died. According to another midrash, the seemingly happy ending of Ruth and Boaz marrying and conceiving a son is actually marred by Boaz's death on their wedding night, presumably after the consummation. But even leaving all of the Boaz legends aside, the fact remains that Naomi and Ruth have a long and difficult road to travel before the happy ending. We read the story of two, possibly three, vulnerable people in mourning who nonetheless commit to each other and to demonstrating love and kindness towards one another. And we take the time out on Shavuot, holiday celebrating our commitment to the Torah, to note and celebrate commitment between people and the power of connecting to one another in the midst of grief and suffering. As important as the Torah and Revelation are, and they are extremely important, please do not misunderstand me, it is the connection and chesed, right, loving kindness of these people to one another that will ultimately lead to redemption. Similarly, we are all gathered here because we have experienced loss. And both on a national and on a personal level. We're in the midst of a particularly vulnerable period. And while we're given the opportunity to celebrate the Torah and to celebrate the legacy and the history and the stories that we have been given, we also have this moment, particularly here together during Yizkor, to acknowledge and appreciate our human relationships and how they have shaped us and enhanced our lives, both with those who have passed away and with each other. So on that note, we will continue with a Yizkor that is dedicated to a relative or a friend. As I recite the text, you're invited to focus on the name or names of those whom you are remembering today. I will read this and the following texts in Hebrew, but you're welcome to follow along in the English. Yizkor Elohim et nishmat שהלכה לעולמו, בעבור שאתן בלי נדר צדקה בעדה. בשכר זה תהא נפשו נפשה צרורה בצרור החיים, עם נשמת אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, שרה, רבקה, רחל ולאה, ועם שאר צדיקים וצדקניות שבגן עדן, ונאמר אמן. We will now continue with a Yizkor in memory of those who perished on October 7th. נשמת כל מי שנפגעו ונפרעו פרעות וכל זוועות בשביעי באוקטובר, על האימה אשר פקדה איש ואישה, זקנים ובני הנעורים וילדות וילדים, שאין פינו יודע כיצד לזעוק ולאומרה. נזכור את כולם, כפר עזה, ניר עם, בארי, ניר עוז, נובה, אופקים, שדרות, אשקלון, נתיב העשרה, מפלסים. Shavuot tends to fall in the period between when the liberation of the concentration camps took place, May 1945, and D-Day, June 6, 1944. So we will continue with a Yizkor in memory of the victims of the Holocaust. יזכור אלוהים את כל הנשמות של כל קהילות בית ישראל בגולת אירופה, שהועלו על מוקד בשנות השואה תש עד תש"ע, 6 מיליון אנשים ונשים, ילדות וילדים, בחורים ובחורות, זקן וטף, שנהרגו ושנטבחו באכזריות איומה, ונרצחו ברצח המונים במקומות מגוריהם בערים, בעיירות ובכפרים. ויתרם הובלו למחנות הריכוז ונספו במיתות משונות ונוראות, ונשרפו לעפר בכבשני האש של מחנות ההשמדה האיומים בגרמניה ובפולין ובשאר ארצות, בידי עם המרצחים הגרמני יחד עם עוזריו הרוצחים משאר העמים, שהיו בעצה אחת להשמיד ולהרוג ולאבד את העם היהודי ולמחוק את זכר היהודים ולכלות כל אשר בשם ישראל יקרא. I will now recite El Malei Rachamim. When I pause, you are invited to say the name or names of those whom you are remembering today. At the end, we will have a moment of silence to think about those we have lost and to have an opportunity to feel their presence among us. El Malei Rachamim shochen במרומים. המצא מנוחה נכונה על כנפי השכינה, במעלת קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים. את נשמת שהלך לעולמו, בעבור שבלי נדר תן צדקה בעד הזכרת נשמתו, בגן עדן תהא מנוחתו, לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים. ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו, אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר אמן. Now the moment of silence. We'll conclude this Yizkor service with the recitation of the Mourner's Kaddish. On the Shavuot, may you, each and every one of you, walk in the footsteps of Ruth and Naomi and find comfort and connection and some relief in the midst of a difficult journey.
I'm going to share the words of the Mourner's Kaddish in a moment. As a reminder, everyone is now free to unmute yourselves, and please let Rabbi Druck get us started, and hold your amens and goodbyes until the end when everybody has had a chance.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Before we conclude, I wanted to just thank Rabbi Druck. Thank you all for being here. All of you make this possible. Thank in particular Rhonda and Adam Hauser, who are participants who also sponsor our ability to hold Yizkor services. We're very grateful. And with that, here are the words of the Kaddish.
Yitkadal
Viskadal v'yiskadal V'yedekol Beit Yisrael V'yedekol Beit Yisrael Shmei Rabba Marak Yochla Omei Omai Barak Yishtava V'yisadar Elam
Shlomo Rabbi Mishamaya V'chaim Alini V'Yakol
Shlokoso
Yisrael
V'necham Yisrael Kol
Zeh Shalom B'Ramav
Shalom B'Ramav
Shalom Aleinu
Osei Shalom B'Leinu
Amen.
Thank you guys for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Rabbi. Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you,
Rabbi.
Thank you,
Thank you.
very much.
Thank
you,
you.
Thank you all for being here.
Rabbi.
Thanks to everybody.
Shalom, shalom.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.